There's a farming liquid so powerful that Korean farmers have used it for over 3,000 years without ever needing a single bag of commercial fertilizer. They make it from weeds, from kitchen scraps, from leaves that fall in their backyards. Materials that cost absolutely nothing, fermented in water until they transform into something that modern agriculture cannot explain. The plants fed with this liquid grow faster than chemically fertilized crops. They resist diseases that devastate conventional farms. They produce yields that agricultural scientists have measured, documented, and then quietly refused to discuss. A Korean natural farming master named Yong Cho spent 50 years perfecting this system. He tested it against every commercial fertilizer on the market. He documented results across thousands of farms spanning 3 continents. His liquid won. Every single time. Not by small margins. By margins so large that the fertilizer industry demanded he stop publishing his findings. By differences so dramatic that agricultural universities funded by chemical companies refused to acknowledge his research existed. Cho did something the industry never expected. He gave the knowledge away for free. He wrote books explaining exactly how to make these liquids. He traveled the world teaching farmers who could not afford commercial inputs. He built a movement of millions of farmers producing their own fertility from materials the fertilizer industry considered garbage. The system is called Jadam. It stands for Jaeonul Damun Saramdul, which translates to people who resemble nature. The fertilizer industry generates $200 billion annually selling products that Jadam makes obsolete. The pesticide industry adds another $80 billion selling chemicals that Jadam farmers do not need. For 3,000 years, Korean farmers fed their families without these industries. For 50 years, Yong Cho proved that modern farmers could do the same. The knowledge exists, the techniques are documented, the results are verified. The only question is why you have never heard of it. Before we open this vault, if these stories matter to you, the best way to preserve this knowledge is simple. Subscribe, hit the bell, and share these vaults with those who need to remember what we forgot. The story begins in the mountains of South Korea, where Yong Cho was born into a farming family that had never purchased fertilizer. His grandfather farmed the same land his great-grandfather had farmed. His great-grandfather farmed the land his ancestors had worked for generations beyond memory. None of them had ever seen a bag of synthetic nitrogen. Yet their soil remained fertile. Their crops remained healthy. Their yields remained consistent across centuries. Yong Cho asked his grandfather the question that would define his life's work. How did the soil stay rich when nothing was added? His grandfather's answer was simple. We add everything. We just do not buy it. The old man showed Yong Cho the fermentation crocks behind the farmhouse, dark liquids brewing from weeds and leaves, thick pastes made from fish scraps and bones, living solutions teeming with microorganisms visible to the naked eye. This is the fertility, his grandfather said. This is what the soil needs. The forest makes it from fallen leaves. We make it from what the forest teaches us. Cho spent his childhood learning these techniques. He watched his grandfather brew solutions from plants that most farmers would have burned or discarded. He learned which weeds made the strongest fertilizers. He discovered which combinations produced the healthiest crops. By the time he reached adulthood, industrial agriculture had arrived in Korea. Salesmen from chemical companies traveled the countryside promising miracles. Higher yields, less labor, modern farming that would replace the primitive methods of the past. Cho watched his neighbors abandon the old techniques. They bought bags of fertilizer. They sprayed chemical pesticides. They followed the recommendations of experts from agricultural universities. Within a decade, their soil began dying. The yields that had been promised did not materialize, or they materialized briefly and then declined. The farmers needed more fertilizer each year to achieve the same results. The pesticides killed beneficial insects along with pests, creating imbalances that required more pesticides to address. The farms that had been sustainable for centuries became dependent on inputs they could barely afford. Cho's farm, still using his grandfather's methods, continued producing as it always had. His soil remained alive. His crops remained healthy. His costs remained near zero. He began documenting what he observed. The science behind Jadam explains why it works when modern agriculture insists it should not. Soil is not a dead medium that holds plants upright. Soil is a living ecosystem containing billions of organisms per teaspoon. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and countless other creatures form complex communities that process nutrients and make them available to plants. Synthetic fertilizers ignore this biology. They deliver nutrients in chemical forms that plants can absorb directly. This seems efficient. It seems scientific. It seems like progress over the slow, complicated processes of natural fertility. But the efficiency is an illusion. Plants fed synthetic nutrients do not need soil biology to access nutrition. The microbial communities that would normally process organic matter into plant food have nothing to do. Without food and purpose, they die. Dead soil cannot hold water efficiently. It cannot suppress disease organisms. It cannot provide the thousands of micronutrients that plants need in trace amounts. It becomes dependent on ever-increasing chemical inputs to function at all. Jadam takes the opposite approach. The fermented liquids that Cho's grandfather brewed were not plant food. They were soil food. They fed the microbial communities that then fed the plants. The process mimics what happens on a forest floor. Leaves fall and decompose. Microorganisms break them down into nutrients. Plants absorb these nutrients through root systems intertwined with fungal networks. The forest feeds itself through biology, not chemistry. Jadam recreates this forest floor process in concentrated, accelerated form. The fermented plant extracts contain not just nutrients, but the microorganisms that process nutrients. When applied to soil, they inoculate depleted ground with the biology it has lost. They restart the natural systems that synthetic agriculture destroyed. The results appear quickly. Farmers transitioning from chemical to Jadam methods report soil changes within a single season. The earth becomes darker, indicating increasing organic matter. It becomes softer, indicating improving structure. It begins smelling like forest soil rather than dead dirt. The plants respond to these changes with vigor that surprises farmers accustomed to chemical dependency. The core Jadam solution is called Jadam Microbial Solution, or JMS. The recipe is almost insultingly simple. Collect leaf mold from a healthy forest floor. The material directly beneath fallen leaves, dark and crumbly and smelling of earth. This leaf mold contains the microbial communities that break down organic matter in nature. Place the leaf mold in a container. Add water. Add a small amount of sea salt. Wait. Within days, the water becomes cloudy with microbial activity. Within a week, it teems with life visible to the naked eye. Within 2 weeks, you have a concentrated microbial inoculant that can transform dead soil into living soil. The solution is diluted and applied to soil or sprayed on plant leaves. The microorganisms colonize wherever they land. They begin processing organic matter into plant-available nutrients. They compete with disease organisms for space and resources. The cost is effectively zero. Leaf mold is available from any forest. Water comes from rain or tap. Sea salt costs pennies per batch. The most powerful soil inoculant on Earth can be made in a bucket behind your house. Compare this to commercial microbial products. Garden centers sell bacterial inoculants for $20 to $50 per bottle. The bottles contain a fraction of the microbial diversity present in JMS. They have been processed and packaged in ways that reduce viability. They cost hundreds of times more while delivering a fraction of the benefit. The fertilizer industry cannot compete with free. They cannot patent leaf mold. They cannot trademark rainwater. They cannot monopolize the microorganisms that exist in every healthy forest on Earth. So they pretend Jadam does not work. They fund research into everything except traditional fermentation. They train agricultural extension agents to recommend products rather than processes. The knowledge remains available to anyone willing to look. The industry simply ensures that very few people look. The second essential Jadam preparation is Jadam liquid fertilizer, or JLF. Where JMS provides biology, JLF provides nutrition. Together, they replace every commercial fertilizer product on the market. The process is equally simple. Collect plant material, any plant material, weeds from your garden, grass clippings from your lawn, kitchen scraps from your meals. The diversity of inputs determines the diversity of nutrients in the final product. Place the plant material in a container. Add water. Add a small amount of JMS to inoculate with microorganisms. Wait. The fermentation takes 2 to 3 weeks. The plant material breaks down into liquid form. The nutrients that were locked in plant tissues become available for other plants to absorb. The smell indicates progress. Fresh plant material smells green and vegetal. Fermenting material develops an earthy, slightly sour odor. Finished JLF has a complex smell that gardeners describe as rich and alive. The liquid is diluted heavily before application. 1 part JLF to 50 or 100 parts water. The concentrated solution is powerful enough that direct application can burn plants. The diversity of nutrients in JLF exceeds any commercial fertilizer. Synthetic fertilizers typically provide 3 nutrients: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Plants need at least 17 nutrients for healthy growth. The 14 missing from most fertilizers must come from somewhere. In chemical agriculture, they often do not come at all. Micronutrient deficiencies are epidemic in modern farming. Plants grow but lack the trace elements that create nutrition for humans and animals. The food produced looks normal but provides diminished nutritional value. JLF, made from diverse plant materials, provides complete nutrition. Every nutrient present in the source plants becomes available in the fermented liquid. Using diverse weeds and scraps ensures diverse nutrients. The resulting fertilizer is more complete than anything available commercially. Cho documented crop responses to JLF across hundreds of farms. Plants showed increased growth rates. Fruit quality improved measurably. Disease resistance increased significantly. The improvements were consistent regardless of crop type or location. The pest and disease control in Jadam relies on the same fermentation principles. Yong Cho observed that farms using Jadam methods experienced fewer pest problems than conventional farms. The living soil somehow protected plants from attacks that devastated neighbors using chemical approaches. Healthy soil contains disease-suppressive organisms, bacteria and fungi that attack plant pathogens before they can attack plants. These beneficial organisms are casualties of chemical agriculture, but thrive in biologically active soil. Plants grown in living soil develop stronger immune responses. They produce defensive compounds more readily when threatened. Their cell walls are stronger. Their root systems connect with beneficial fungi that trigger immune activation throughout the plant. But Cho went further. He developed fermented sprays that controlled pests directly while remaining completely non-toxic to humans, animals, and beneficial insects. The key discovery was that plants produce their own pesticides. Every plant species has evolved chemical defenses against the organisms that attack it. These compounds are present in leaves, stems, and roots. They are often concentrated in plants that we consider weeds. Jadam extracts these natural pesticides through fermentation. Hot pepper produces capsaicin that repels insects. Fermented hot pepper extract concentrates this compound into a sprayable form. Insects avoid treated plants because the plants taste like pure pepper. Wild tobacco produces nicotine, one of the most effective insecticides known. Fermented tobacco extract provides pest control that chemical companies spent millions trying to synthesize. Garlic, onion, chrysanthemum, neem. Dozens of plants produce compounds that control pests naturally. Jadam fermentation makes these compounds available to any farmer willing to make them. The results match or exceed chemical pesticides without the toxicity. Cho documented pest control across multiple crops and pest species. Jadam preparations controlled aphids, caterpillars, mites, and fungal diseases. The treatments cost almost nothing and left no harmful residues. The economic implications of Jadam terrify the agricultural industry. Consider what a farmer currently spends on inputs. Fertilizer costs range from $100 to $300 per acre annually for most crops. Pesticides add $50 to $200 more. Herbicides add another $50 to $100. A 1,000-acre farm might spend $300,000 annually on chemical inputs. Jadam reduces these costs by 90% or more. The materials are free or nearly free. The labor required is modest. The equipment needed is minimal. A farmer can produce fertility and pest control for a few $1,000s that would cost hundreds of thousands through conventional purchasing. The savings transform farm economics entirely. Farms that were barely profitable become highly profitable. Farms that require debt financing become self-funding. Farmers who work to pay input suppliers begin working for themselves. This threatens not just the fertilizer industry. Banks profit from agricultural loans. Equipment dealers profit from selling application machinery. Transportation companies profit from shipping inputs. An entire ecosystem of businesses depends on farmers buying products they could make themselves. Jadam collapses this entire ecosystem. A farmer making their own fertility needs no loans to buy fertilizer. They need no spreaders to apply it. They need no trucks to deliver it. The money that flowed to corporations stays on the farm. The industry response has been predictable. Agricultural universities do not teach Jadam. Extension services do not recommend it. Farm publications do not feature it. The knowledge is suppressed not through active opposition, but through systematic exclusion from every channel that reaches farmers. Yong Cho understood this dynamic. He bypassed official channels entirely. He taught farmers directly. He wrote books that anyone could purchase. He created a movement that spread through farmer-to-farmer networks that institutions could not control. The global spread of Jadam has accelerated despite institutional resistance. Cho traveled to teach on every continent except Antarctica. He trained farmers in Asia, Africa, South America, and North America. He adapted his techniques to local conditions and local materials. The core principles remained constant. Ferment local plants to create local fertility. Use diverse materials to ensure diverse nutrition. Feed the soil biology rather than feeding plants directly. The adaptations address local circumstances. Tropical farmers use tropical weeds that northern farmers do not have. Desert farmers adjust water ratios for arid conditions. Each region develops its own variations while maintaining the fundamental approach. The results are consistent regardless of location. Farmers report soil improvement within the first season. Yields stabilize or improve while input costs collapse. The dependency on purchased products ends. Online communities have amplified the spread. YouTube channels demonstrate Jadam techniques to millions of viewers. Facebook groups connect practitioners across continents. The knowledge that institutions tried to suppress spreads faster than ever through networks they cannot control. The Jadam book has been translated into multiple languages. The detailed instructions that Cho spent decades developing are now available to anyone with internet access or a few dollars for a book. The barrier to entry has dropped to almost zero. The industry watches this spread with alarm. Every farmer who adopts Jadam is a customer lost permanently. Every community that learns these techniques becomes independent of the supply chains that generate profits. Every season of successful Jadam farming provides evidence that challenges official recommendations. The suppression is failing, not because institutions have changed their approach, because the knowledge has found channels that institutions do not control. The 3,000-year-old techniques have met 21st century communication. The combination is proving unstoppable. Making your first Jadam preparation requires almost nothing you do not already have. Start with Jadam microbial solution. Find a forest or undisturbed area with healthy soil. Look beneath the layer of fallen leaves. The dark, crumbly material there is leaf mold, rich with the microorganisms you need. Collect a few handfuls. Place them in a bucket. Add water until the leaf mold is submerged. Add a pinch of sea salt per gallon, roughly 1 gram per liter. Cover loosely to allow air exchange. Stir daily. Within 1 week, the water will cloud with microbial life. Within 2 weeks, you have JMS ready to use. Dilute 1 part JMS to 20 parts water for soil application. Apply to garden beds before planting, after planting, and throughout the growing season. The microorganisms will colonize your soil and begin the transformation. Move to Jadam liquid fertilizer once you have JMS. Collect plant material. Weeds are ideal because they have accumulated diverse nutrients from your local soil. Comfrey, nettle, dandelion, and grass clippings all work excellently. Fill a container 1/3 full with plant material. Add water to cover. Add a splash of JMS to inoculate. Cover loosely and wait. Stir every few days. The fermentation is complete when plant material has broken down into brown liquid, typically 2 to 3 weeks. Strain out solids. Dilute 1 part JLF to 50 parts water for regular feeding. Apply weekly during the growing season. Your plants will receive complete nutrition from materials that cost you nothing. The progression from first batch to complete system happens naturally. You observe results, you gain confidence, you expand your production. Within a single season, you can transition from complete dependence on purchased inputs to complete independence. The journey that took Yong 50 years to document can begin in your backyard this weekend. The story of Jadam is ultimately a story about who controls knowledge. For 3,000 years, Korean farmers passed fermentation techniques from generation to generation. The knowledge was common property. Anyone could learn it. Anyone could practice it. No one owned it. Industrial agriculture changed this relationship. Knowledge became proprietary. Fertility became a product. Farmers became customers rather than practitioners. The skills that had been universal became obscure. Yong spent his life reversing this transformation. He documented knowledge that was being lost. He systematized techniques that were being forgotten. He gave freely what industries wanted to sell. His books contain no secrets withheld for profit. His teaching holds nothing back for paying students. The entire system is available to anyone willing to learn. This generosity is the greatest threat to the fertilizer industry. They can compete with other products. They cannot compete with free. They can market against other brands. They cannot market against a movement. The $200 billion fertilizer industry exists because farmers believe they need to buy fertility. Jadam proves they do not. The $80 billion pesticide industry exists because farmers believe they need to buy pest control. Jadam proves they do not. The institutional suppression of Jadam protects hundreds of billions in annual revenue. The continued spread of Jadam threatens to collapse it. You can participate in this transformation, not through protest or politics, through practice. Every bucket of JMS you brew is fertilizer revenue that never gets generated. Every batch of JLF you make is another farmer demonstrating that independence is possible. The knowledge is 3,000 years old. The application is as modern as your next growing season. The liquid that replaces all fertilizers is waiting to be made. In a bucket, in your backyard. From materials the industry considers garbage. 3,000 years of wisdom. Zero cost. Infinite possibility? If this vault opens something for you, subscribe and hit the bell. Every like and every share helps preserve this wisdom. The next vault opens soon.